This is TWiT.
When we talk about synthetic biology and CRISPR, how would that change society? And I'll not reveal anything that spoils the story, but to me, cellular agriculture and biofacturing are two things that just excite me. This came several years ago. I was visiting an MIT Media Lab, and synthetic biology and biohacking was revealed to me as a really cool thing. The idea of editing these bacteria, E. coli bacteria and yeast and algae.
You make your fuels with E. coli bacteria.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
They right now are designing, and again, they're trying to optimize it. They're changing, they're reprogramming E. coli. There's actually, I'm trying to remember the name of it. I think it has 238 genes. George Church or his group figured out how to make an E. coli bacteria that really all it does is just reproduce itself and sustain the cell. That's all it does. So it is ready to be programmed to do other things, like perhaps you could create two versions of it that feed into each other's processing loops, where one might take sugar and with sunlight convert it into something else that could be consumed by another E. coli, and you could start to create a factory that could ultimately produce a biofuel or a pharmaceutical, let's say aspirin, or could start to sequester carbon out of the environment, and on and on. And so it's nanotechnology, and of course we remember the gray ooze, the gray goo that everyone was concerned about. And I think that was always some technology that would reproduce. But biology really is the original open source. It is a technology. It is certainly the most efficient storage that we have come up with. It is durable. And learning how to work with it, how to make it do productive work for human beings without ruining our environment, basically becoming more at one with nature, I think is our next great challenge, and creating sustainable manufacturing systems. Manufacturing systems that don't create all this pollution that go counter to the environment, but instead, for instance, and I have this somewhat in the book, the idea that you wouldn't stamp out car fenders with this very carbon and heat intensive and mining and all that stuff, but you could grow them from the same shell material that shrimp make their shells.
Cars.
Yeah, exactly. And this came out of a TED Talk where I was watching this one researcher, and oh my gosh, I keep forgetting her name, and you could easily find it, but she was doing sculptures that were lattice work made of chitin, and also had silkworms working on projects. So this idea that you could grow shell in a certain shape. Now, some people think, well, that seems kind of impossible. To which I would say a lobster has all these interlocking carapaces, horn. Basically, Mother Nature is the biggest manufacturing system that ever was.
And where's the blueprint? It's in the DNA.
It's in every cell.
And if you can edit the DNA...
Yes. So I think that's our challenge, is to create, for the fourth industrial revolution, manufacturing and agricultural systems that are part and one with the ecosystem, to basically figure out how ecosystems work. And this is where those big data centers and AI come in, is rather than, let's say, optimizing the stock market, maybe we can figure out how to decode a DNA, what the ramifications are of all these changes. And we have a fuse burning on this, because again, climate change to me is not a question. It is occurring. There's tons of evidence. And we see this. We know, for instance, big companies like Exxon have been planning for this for a while. The Pentagon certainly takes it very seriously from a social disruption point of view. So I set that aside as a really settled matter. Think about us modifying crops to keep the great variety of fruits and vegetables we have, changing them so that they can survive in a rapidly changing environment. A great example, Michelle, what was her name? The researcher, Dr. Pamela Ronald, Dr. Pamela Ronald at UC Davis, right? Am I right there? Thank you. Sorry, it's my wife.
Do you ever use her for research for the book?
It's my Google. So I on-the-fly Google. But Dr. Ronald, she basically took an obscure strain of Indian rice that was not very productive, but it had this great quality where it could survive under salt water for 17 days. She took that and she genetically changed very popular, productive rice strains and gave them that ability. Wow. Then they gave that to farmers. So they didn't make them captive to it, but they made it so that, so when people think, oh, genetic modifications are evil, How is that evil? You know,
Right.
it's like if these people had the
feed
choice
the
of
world.
starving
Yeah.
or not. And C4 photosynthesis rice is a great example of this, because right now C3 photosynthesis is the type of photosynthesis that most rice strains use. And that is less productive. It requires more water. Now, sugarcane and other crops like that use C4 photosynthesis. So the goal right now is researchers are trying to change popular rice strains to use this. The only change that would be how it processes light to convert it to energy to grow rice. And if they did that, it would use half the water and it would produce almost twice as much rice. Now, a third of the population of the earth uses rice to stay alive. So again, how could that be morally, it would be immoral not to do it.
Yeah.
And so especially in a rapidly changing world. So this is why I think these technologies are incredibly important. And in the process of learning to do those things, let's say to keep ourselves alive in a rapidly changing world, we will learn mastery of DNA, and that will tempt us to do other things. And so, again, we will have this new power, and the old superhero comment is that with great power comes great responsibility. Well, we will be acquiring new superpowers, and we have to explore them and learn how to use them responsibly. And part of what I try to do in my books is just that. I think it's a lot less expensive and damaging to everyone if we prototype the future.
Imagine it. Yeah.
Yes.